This is a Gretsch 6120 Brian Setzer Nashville, and when I was a teenager, this was my dream guitar. You know the saying, be careful what you wish for? Well, my dream guitar quickly became a nightmare. And with any luck, this video will save you a lot of hassles so you don't make the same mistakes that I did. And without further ado, here are 5 things you should consider before buying your dream guitar. First off, reputation. No guitar maker is perfect. It doesn't matter how much care goes into building an instrument. Wood can shift around, hardware can fail, electronics can go bad. Maybe you already know this, but big brands like Fender and Gibson have had good years and bad years. And there's no way of knowing in advance whether this year is a good one or a bad one. What I didn't know back in 2003 was that Gretsch guitars made from about 1989 to 2002 were notorious for quality control problems. Bad wood, faulty electronics, messed up frets, you name it. Now, what could I have done differently to avoid buying a guitar in the first place that had all these potential issues? Nowadays, a little digging around on the internet is all it takes. Watch a few videos, check out some guitar forums, read some reviews. Do yourself a big favor and check around first before buying a guitar. If this happens to be an off year, you might be better off waiting or buying a used instrument. So I got home with my dream guitar, and that's when the trouble really started. The first problem I had was that the high E string kept snagging on the edge of the frets. And in case you didn't know, it's not supposed to do that. Bad fretwork is one of the most common quality control issues you can find on a new guitar. And on a cheaper guitar, you might let that slide. But this is a guitar, if they hadn't been trying to get rid of it, would have normally sold for over $3,000. Unacceptable. Since I was young and stupid, I didn't know what fret sprout was. That's when the weather causes the fretboard to shrink until the fret ends poke out and cut your hand like a cheese grater. So I took it back to Guitar Center and had their tech fix it for me. And he fixed it in pretty much the laziest way possible. Instead of rounding off the edges and polishing them, this person beveled the fret ends until they were almost flat. The shoddy repair fixed one problem, but I began to notice something else. The switches, pots, and jack were extremely noisy, and sometimes the signal would cut out completely, even when I sprayed it with contact cleaner. When guitar makers are trying to build a guitar that they can sell at a certain price point, one of the first things they'll cheap out on is the electronics. And that can mean using cheap components that are more prone to wearing out or corroding faster. Now, guitar sellers don't like to talk about this because it might scare off a lot of potential buyers. Before you buy a guitar, you should always check the frets, the nut, the hardware, all of the knobs and switches, trying to find anything that doesn't seem right. Now, at this point, I was beginning to think I had a lemon. But it was still my dream guitar, so back in the case it went, until I could find a cure. Playability. Even with the frets fixed up and coming to the understanding that the electronics were junk, the guitar was still a miserable experience to play. The action was a mile high. The intonation was bad. It had tuning issues whenever I used the Bigsby or bent a string. And to make matters worse, everything rattled and buzzed. Guitars are supposed to play in tune. All 6 strings all the way up the neck should sound good. A few rattles are okay, especially on a hollow body guitar with lots of parts, just as long as you don't hear any of those rattles through the amp. And I had no idea how to set up a hollow body guitar, let alone a guitar with a Bigsby. So how do you solve these kinds of problems? Personally, over the last 20 years, I've taken the time to learn how to intonate a guitar, set the neck relief, and addressing tuning issues by keeping the strings from binding in either the nut or the saddles. So back in October of 2021, I retrieved my beloved 6120 from my parents' house and set out to fix some of these problems. I cleaned it up, I polished the frets, oiled the fretboard, set the truss rod, the intonation, and I smoothed out the slots at the nut and the saddles to clear up some of the tuning issues. So now I had a guitar that played great but still sounded like junk. The tone. With few exceptions, the tone of an electric guitar is one of the easiest things to change. Anyone with a soldering iron and a little bit of patience can change a set of pickups. It's not that hard. Swapping pots and switches in a solid body guitar is also pretty straightforward. But this is a hollow body guitar, and nothing is easy on a hollow body. From the day I bought the guitar, the stock Filtertron pickups had no output. When I was in college, I picked up a set of TV Jones TV Classics and swapped out the original pickups. They sounded better, but the pots and switches were still noisy as all get up, and I just didn't have the skills to deal with it. As I later learned, when Fender took over manufacturing for Gretsch, they fixed most of these issues. Well, most people would have sold a guitar that was this much trouble, but I guess I was stubborn. Have a plan. So should you never buy a guitar because it might have problems? And if you do buy a guitar that has problems, does that mean you should automatically return it, sell it, burn it for kindling? No. All you need is a plan for how you're gonna fix everything if and when it goes wrong. Do you have a guitar tech who you trust? Or do you have the skills to solve the problems yourself? Keep in mind, a bad guitar tech or a botched DIY job can turn a small problem into a big problem. Well, I know how to solder, so why didn't I just fix the electronics years ago? Because I had two choices. I could spend hundreds of dollars on a pre-wired harness, along with new knobs and switch tips to fit the new parts. Or I could source all the parts myself and build a wiring harness from scratch for around half the price. After so many years of dealing with this guitar, I really didn't want to spend more money on it. And I wasn't confident in my ability to rewire the whole thing myself, until now. My plan is to keep learning and improving my skills so I don't have to depend on other people to fix my guitars. Granted, I don't think I'll ever be a guitar builder. I have no woodworking skills, but I don't think that's necessary just to have a better playing guitar. And now after 20 years of this guitar mostly sitting in the case, I'm finally making it into the guitar it always should have been. Now if you excuse me, I have some soldering to do.